CMO and EVP of Commerce Strategy and Interactive at Access Commerce. So please come on.
Good morning. Welcome to day 3 of B2B. I'm going to briefly introduce myself, tell you about my background real quick. This is not about me, it's about you, and it's about the conference. I'm going to tee up a couple concepts. At this point, we've covered quite a number of topics, and I certainly don't want to be Captain Obvious the entire time here, but I want to tee up a few different ideas and then segue into the themes for this morning. So just real quickly, Access Commerce, we are a commerce solution company. We've been around for about 13 years. You may or may not have heard of us. We operate here in the US, Latin America, Asia Pacific. We're very commerce focused, and we have 6 practice areas, which you can see up here. My role at the company is on the three blue circles. So focusing on insights, which is around things like analytics and big data, really figuring out what's going on with your users, with your business, looking at KPIs, how to improve those. Experience design, we've talked a lot about the importance of really understanding what the buyer journey is and mapping that backwards, starting with that and then mapping that back into your design of your site. We have for marketing and then kind of going around the loop there. One of the things that makes Access unique is a growth optimization model. This is really the way that we like to begin conversations about B2B challenges, commerce solutioning. It's quite simple, but it's pretty profound, we think, because it applies to all aspects of the business. Come up with this concept of the right customer with the right experience and the right offer. And what this entails is really starting with the right customer, understanding who your customers are from a persona perspective or from a segmentation perspective. In other words, we see a lot of clients have an opportunity to offer a better website experience if they can migrate out of a one-size-fits-all. And I'm sure a lot of you deal with that as well. The right experience can be anything from the web page itself, to the flow of the checkout, to the purchasing order process, to the way people can set up accounts, company accounts, user accounts, the whole part that really makes B2B different from B2C. And then the right offer, again, is around content, the right promotions. And this can extend not only to the website, but also into things like customer service, and even the way your sales organizations are interacting with your customers. I want to tell you a quick story, personal story. So prior to working at Access, one of the companies I worked for was TaylorMade Golf. And back in 2008, I started with TaylorMade, and I was brought on as the Global VP of Digital, which had responsibilities of both B2C and B2B. And I started my career in the digital space way back, I'm going to date myself here, but way back in 1995 in Silicon Valley. And here I'm at TaylorMade, and what is that? 13 years of being a techie guy, really, and a marketer. And I just came in swinging. I mean, excited to be there, like a dream job. Here I'm, one of the coolest companies in my view in the world. Wow, I get to run B2C and B2B. So, I quickly realized that getting ideas integrated into the company, indoctrinated, and to evangelize digital concepts and digital innovation required way more than just fancy ideas and talking about the technology side of it. So I right away, I got there, looked at the the B2C channel, looked at the B2B, and saw tons of opportunity. We had all the customer service people on blue screens, which some of you may know what that is, some of you may be experiencing that. And we still had this B2B site that was not really that bad. It just wasn't getting used. So customer service wasn't using it. None of the salespeople were using it. I talked with our CMO and I said, hey, Bob, what about this B2B site? Like, why aren't people really using it? And he said to me, like, what B2B site? Like, didn't even know it existed. So, my conversations really started off with, customer service, sales, marketing, and IT. And, this is a picture that I found last week so if you want to look at this metaphor, I'm basically the bear in the background. And I'd say the guy on the right would be my head of sales. We got my head of marketing in the middle, and head of IT on the left. And this is probably an exaggeration. I wish that they were paying this much attention to me, but this is essentially how I felt. It's like anytime I'd bring up B2B innovation, hey, what can we do differently? And I was listening. I was listening to feedback from the customer service people on the ground, like, hey, we have these blue screens, this is ridiculous. I'd hear that and I'd say, hey, let me show you something. Did you even know we had this B2B site? And then they would look at it, oh, well, that's great. So then I'd talk to the head of service, and there's always an excuse, there's always pushback, there's always this fear of change. And the customer service head would say, well, there's lots of training that we have to do. And I'm thinking, well, she's thinking, yeah, there's a lot of training. The blue screens aren't intuitive. It takes 2 weeks of training. You can hop on the B2B site and you can make an order right away. Talk to the sales guys. No, there's not really an opportunity for B2B in the sales thing. I said, well, what about half of our customers who are these little pro shops, out spread out all over the country? Wouldn't it be great for them to do order again? And they said, no, none of these guys like to use computers. We do deals. We shake hands. We go play some golf. And they sign. They fill out a piece of paper. And again, in IT. I have a love-hate relationship with IT, as probably most of us do. Unless you're in IT, you probably hate yourself, right? No. So I talked to my head of IT, and he said, hey, look, this has got to come from the business. It's got to get funded. He's like, I'm not sticking my neck out. We're not going to invest in IT. So between 2008 and 2010, this was sort of my role and the dynamic between myself and the rest of the people trying to evangelize B2B. And then something miraculous happened. In April 2010, it was the iPad. And it was, I call this my tipping point in B2B when I was at TaylorMade. Totally changed the game overnight. So why was the iPad so important in getting past that hump? Well, for TaylorMade, there was a few reasons. The first reason wasn't because the iPad was going to be so innovative and it was going to change the way that we, reducing the cost of operations and speeding up, the transaction of putting in a new order. It was actually what I would call the cool factor. So it really became, first, it was an extension of the brand. So the company right away said, this is cool, right? If our sales folks are out in the field with an iPad taking orders and now sitting there and playing videos, showing the product, that is going to make people want to buy. And so in April of 2010, I convinced TaylorMade to invest in an iPad for every single one of the sales reps, which was like a windfall. Unbelievable that it happened. I was so excited. I think I was the first person in San Diego to actually get an iPad. I was that excited. And we bought, how many was it? I think about 350 iPads. We loaded them all up with sales collateral, videos, and of course, data plan, and access to the B2B portal. And that's when it all began. And then from there, sales reps started using it. Then they started having feedback. Finally now somebody's looking at it and they said, hey, wow, this is great. This is so much better than the blue screen. This is so cool. I was spending at least one day a week having to take all the orders that I had from the field that I'd written down on paper and to log them into these blue screens. Now I can actually get the whole thing done in like an hour. This is phenomenal. And so word started spreading around the company, and pretty soon there was really more of this pulling effect going on. And not this pushing for me, not this kind of scary, ideas guy, but now this is something real that's happening. And I think I've heard a number of people talk about the importance of getting the sales folks involved, and I couldn't agree more. Because the sales, depending on your organization, but at least at TaylorMade, the sales folks are all recognized as the commercial drivers of the organization. They're the ones that are bringing in the dollars. And so this was now connected commercially with sales. The tablet was the link. That brings me to kind of this concept I want to introduce. It's fairly obvious, but I think it's a good thought starter for this morning, and as we get into listening to the speakers and go into the discussion panels, which is this idea of we've sort of crossed a period, I think, I would say that's starting in 2010, where we're in this period of convergence. And the way I look at it is it's creating this gravitational pull, which is allowing a lot of you to position your B2B initiatives in a new way, right? Because instead of being the person with the great technology ideas and kind of more theoretical, now you got your buyers out there demanding this, right? There's competition in the field. Technology accessibility is a huge one. Not only do we have iPads, which can now extend your B2B offering into across the omni-channel, right? So like any touch point that your customers have, or even your sales force, technology itself has become much more accessible. Everything from cloud solutions to, I look back on just simple things like just having online chat on your site and like a ticketing system. 5-10 years ago, that would have been a $200,000 a year minimum type solution. Now you can do that for a few $100s a month, right? So that also is, I think, creating this pulling effect. And then channel optimization. For TaylorMade and for a lot of branded manufacturers and distributors face this challenge as well. There's a big thing around channel conflict. I like to kind of flip it the other way and call it an opportunity for channel optimization. But I think what's happened is that everybody's recognizing that it's really about the consumer. It's about where they want to engage with that brand and shop for that product. And therefore, all channels really need to be collaborating. Just some stats over there I think are interesting. I won't read them off, but I think we've all really got the message loud and clear that consumers, and when I say consumers, I do mean B2B, but what we're talking about there is that even though it's B2B, it's still an individual. It's still an individual who's trying to figure things out, make decisions, and they're really acting in a lot of ways like a B2C customer. They're searching online, and they are expecting the experience to be easy. So even though we have this gravitational pull happening right now, which is kind of makes that bare picture kind of obsolete now because there's a strong pull, B2B is still very challenging. Why is it so challenging? Everybody in here knows that it's a fact that B2B is just a lot harder than B2C. It's way more complicated. A few other stats here. On average, B2B sites have to have 7 different languages, which I thought was pretty shocking. That makes it complicated. 70% of B2B purchases require at least 2 decision makers. And this third bullet point, come on, really? 30% of B2B purchases require 5 decision makers or greater. That is a hard thing to support. That requires a lot of workflow, a lot of very sophisticated mechanisms to support that user experience. And I think another reason why B2B is hard is that so many of the sites are password protected. So this kind of methodology of learning from others and modeling best practices is really, really difficult. Unless you've got a password, unless you've got a friend who works at a B2B company and get that password. So I think that's why conferences like this and the panel discussions that we're going to have today are so valuable, because it gives you an opportunity to really look inside of these other companies and see what they're doing. And a few other points here is that I think B2B historically was, in terms of web-based, internet-based B2B, not EDI B2B, but web-based B2B, was something that started off as very homegrown. And as a result, there's not a lot of SIs and agencies out there that have a ton of experience. That makes it challenging. You want to be able to go to your partner, your technology partner, and get best practices and have thought leadership, and that can be hard to come by. And then, kind of going down to the last point, I think Amazon and Alibaba are interesting points. I think that they make it difficult because they set the bar so high. Both of these companies are obviously companies that are we aspire to be like, we follow what they're doing, but they're also very, very good at executing, and frankly can make a lot of people nervous. And one of the best things that I've read and believe is the way to face Amazon and Alibaba is to really focus on service, because Alibaba and Amazon both play in a commodities game, right? And I think we all have to recognize that price is not always going to win. It's not the most important factor. But if you can provide great service to your customers, that I think we can all face Amazon. And no offense to anybody who's from Amazon in here or Alibaba, but I think we're all trying to compete there. So my last point, and then I want to introduce the sessions today, and our first speaker is that on one hand, it's quite easy to gather tips and ideas on what we should be doing to make our B2B businesses grow. I think the hard part is getting into knowing how to do it. What are those details, right? So we talk about these broad concepts like experience and the better checkout flow, better merchandising, different order processing types. Well, there's a lot of ways to do that, and I think that's where you get into the devil's in the details. And this morning, we're going to dive into a few different concepts. So, the first two are collaboration. So, what are ways that you can collaborate better with your customers? How can you get into those details? Somebody said it yesterday, and I thought it was very, very poignant, which is when you're collaborating with your customers, try to shift away from asking them, what do you want? And instead, really try to get prepared and come with ideas. Come with 2 or 3 ideas, kind of sketched out, because it's most likely the case that your customers are going to, again, talk very high level, and it's going to not be a starting point for you to really get into the details of what. Collaborating with Salesforce, huge topic, very, very important. Data-driven decisioning. This is, I think, a fascinating area of knowing how to refine your business and drive more results, building an ROI, and then, of course, gaining market share. So these are the sessions for this morning, and I'd like to bring up our first speaker.